Hi guys, this is Michael from Bridge channel, and today this video will talk about AP Bio Unit 1, Chapter 1, The Elements of Life. So the Chapter 1 of Unit 1 in AP Bio talks about the elements of life mainly. The very first thing that they came up with is the matter and energy. So in AP Bio, there are three main ideas about matter and energy. The first one is that all organisms are made up of matters and they require energy to live. Well, we can easily see this in our lives because we need foods to survive. The second main idea is that matter moves in cycles. Well, when they talk about the cycle, they're talking about the matters moving from organism to organism, and sometimes the matters move from organism to environment too. And we call that the cycle of matter. The third main idea is that the energy from sun and chemical compounds are being used. Let's talk about the second part of chapter 1. The second part talks about atoms. So atoms are made of proton, neutron, and electrons. Not all atoms have neutrons, but most of atoms have both proton, neutron, and electrons. Let's see how atoms look. Atoms look like this. It's not always a circle shape, but we usually depict it as circles. So in the center of atoms, there are proton and neutrons, and there are electrons that are orbiting around them. Atoms have something called atomic numbers, and these are equal to the number of protons inside them. And they also have something called atomic mass, which means the number of proton plus number of neutrons. There are multiple types of atoms in the world, and they're shown in the periodic tables. And there are some atoms that are not in periodic tables that we call as isotopes. So for isotopes, these are the atoms with same number of electrons, but different number of neutrons. These are something like Cl37, Cl35, and these kind of stuff. And let's go a little bit deeper about electrons in atoms. Well, electrons in atoms, they create an energy shell. And they orbit around nucleus. And for electrons, the electrons on the most outer side of energy shell, they are called electrons on the most outer energy shell. Are called valence electrons. And they are usually used for covalent bonds in many macromolecules. Now let's talk about the type of bonds inside atom. So the first bond is covalent bond, which I mentioned when I was talking about valence electrons. So for covalent bond, it means that two elements or atoms share pair of electrons. And there are multiple types of covalent bonds, which we call by the number of electrons that they share. So first one is single bond, and the second one is double bond. For single bond, they share 2 electrons, and for double bond, they share 4 electrons. And we can see this in C2H4, where between 2 carbon, they form double bonds, and between carbon and hydrogen, they form single bonds. And about covalent bonds can be both polar and nonpolar. It will be more specific about this when we're talking about water. But basically, water is polar, and this causes water's many characteristics. And these kind of polar bonds, they are made because of uneven distribution of electrons, which causes each part of the molecules to have different rate of attracting electrons to them. And now let's talk about ionic bonds. For ionic bonds, they are made due to attraction of opposite charge ions. For example, there are 2 ions named sodium and chloride. And sodium ion is positive and chloride atom is negative. And these create NaCl, which refers to salt that we usually talk about, like the eating salt. And this is called ionic bonds. And what we refer as chemical reactions are the break and form of these bonds. Now let's talk about human body. So what are human bodies made of? They're made of carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, calcium, and something more. But these 5 are the important ones that you need to know for AP Bio test. So carbon, they are about 52%. For oxygen, it's 21.5%. For nitrogen, it's 8.5%. For hydrogen, 7.5%. For calcium, 4.5%. And we usually call calcium as potassium. And the reason why carbon takes up so many places is that because it allows for covalent bonds. Since carbon has 4 valence electrons, and this creates diverse organic molecules. And well, that's all for Chapter 1 of AP Bio Unit 1, and I was talking about energy and matter in our life and basic bonds that we need to know for AP Bio. That's all. Thank you, and have a great day.